Hey, it's great to be back for another one of our interviews on the Mark Steyn Show with Canadian Conservative Party leadership candidates. As I said, we can't interview every Conservative Party leadership candidate because the show would have to run as long as Bonanza or Murder, She Wrote to cover them all. So I've picked out the ones that are most interest to me. And with us today, it's a pleasure to have Maxime Bernier, who is a former industry minister and foreign minister in Mr. Harper's ministry, and he's widely regarded as, if not the front runner, one of the two or three front runners in the race. So Maxime, let me just start with a fairly basic question. You were foreign minister a decade or so back. How do you see, and things were like a little different then. It was the tail end of the Bush era south of the border. How do you see Canada's role in the world today in 2017?
We have a role to play, but I think for me the most important will be to have a foreign affairs policy that is based on the security and the prosperity of Canadians. So I don't think that we must try to please the UN or these kind of organization. So that's why I think we must work with our allies, with the US and other countries, to fight up to now ISIS, and because that's a threat to our security, and to work also for being sure that will bring prosperity. So more free trade agreements with. I hope that, like the US, will reopen the NAFTA, the free trade agreement. For me, it's a good thing. So more free trade, working with our allies, putting also more money into our defense. That would be important. Actually, we have a commitment with NATO to put 2% of the GDP. So we're not there. I think it must be something that we must have a plan on a midterm and long term to be there. To play our role at the international scene. But you know, we're a small country. I don't want Canada to do something that we cannot. We can help, we can work with our allies, but let's do that for Canadians.
Just to go back to that NATO spending, Donald Trump has been ruder about his NATO allies than any American president. He says, look, these are some of the richest countries in human history, and if they don't want to pay for their own defense, why do we have to do it? And he hasn't singled out the Canadians. It's generally been more the continental Europeans. But I mean, I guess his view is that the Princess Patricias are a great, distinguished regiment who did amazing things in Afghanistan, but there ought to be more of them, and there ought to, and Canada is obliged to spend more on them.
Absolutely, I think on that is right. The challenge that we will have, our election will be in 2019, and actually we have a Liberal government right now that are spending money that we don't have with huge deficit. It was supposed to be a little $10 billion deficit. Now it is a $28 billion deficit, and they don't want to go back to a balanced budget in the next 3 years. So our challenge will be in 2019, we'll have another deficit, maybe around $25 billion. My goal is to have a balanced budget 2 years after a Conservative government. And after that, with the surplus, we must have a plan to achieve our goal for the 2%, but it will have to increase step by step, and maybe we'll have to do that on 8 or 5 to 8 years. So it will depend on but I think first we must have a strong commitment and to be there and to spend that money. From the Liberal government right now, we don't have that commitment, and I think that's wrong.
How does that view of foreign policy impact domestic policy? The current government in Canada is sentimental about refugees. You mentioned the UN. Basically, Canada is happy to let the UN decide who comes to Canada. The United States under Trump doesn't feel that way. Angela Merkel is trying to figure out a way to send some of her refugees back. France and other countries have had problems with ISIS supporters committing terrorist acts. What's your view on the refugee situation?
But on the refugee, first of all, I think what we did when we were in government, that was the right thing to do. We put a lot of focus on private sponsorship refugee. That's better because the integration is always better when you have somebody who's signed and who's responsible of that person. Right. And now the difference with the Trudeau government, it's more governmental, government-sponsored refugee, right, and using the UN. So I think that we must do our own selection and having a little bit less refugee, but less from the government sponsorship, but more from the private sector. And I agree with what Mr. Trump is doing in the U.S. More focus on our needs, and when we decided to have more Syrian refugee, we decided to focus on the Christian over there,
right,
because they were the one that was persecuted at that time. So, but the Trudeau government said no, everybody can come. It's okay to be open, but I think you must focus on the people who are persecuted instead of anybody. So we had a lot of refugees that were in Lebanon, right, and not in Syria. So I think we must go back at what we were doing when we were in government.
On a philosophical level, though, you're not utopian about multiculturalism. Mr. Trudeau told the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that there is no core identity in Canada. There is no mainstream in Canada. You're from the Beauce. Yeah. You're from the biggest town in the Beauce, yeah, which is actually a very small town that's just a kind of hop and a skip across the border from Jackman, Maine.
Jackman, Maine. You're right.
Little road that winds up from Jackman to Saint Georges,
and after that to Quebec City.
That's right. And you seem to be thinking that you would disagree with the Trudeau proposition that Canada is just like Gate 27 at Pearson. It's just whoever happens to be standing in it. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. First, I believe in pluralism, and it's a little bit different than multiculturalism. Yeah. Pluralism, but the most important, they are Canadian values in Canada. You know, we believe in the rule of law. We believe in equality between men and women. We believe in freedom, and that's part of my campaign as a candidate. But we are Canadian, and we know why we are Canadians. And people who are coming to our country, they're coming because of these freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So yes, they are a core Canadian values, and we're proud of that. So I think when Justin Trudeau is saying that, he's not in touch with the population.
When you say things like Canadians believe in freedom of speech, you've changed your mind recently. Yeah. It's a strange world we live in where transgender rights, which affects a tiny proportion of the population, has suddenly become a hot issue. And you supported a transgender bill a while back, but you've actually changed your mind after meeting with a former guest on this show, Professor Jordan Peterson.
Yes, absolutely. When I voted for that, I thought that this bill won't have any impact on the freedom of speech. And so after that, I had a nice chat and a nice briefing with that professor from the University of Toronto. And he told me, because at the provincial level, we have human rights commissions and human rights legislation. And if you look at the one that I voted at the federal level and the one in Toronto and other provinces, the impact on the free speech is enormous.
Right.
So that professor was not able, because of that bill that I voted for, and I think that was a mistake, that I voted for, was not able to decide if he wanted to speak with somebody telling she or he, and the university were asking him to use, I don't know what kind of...
Z. So there's he, she, Z, and a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you, because
So that's why I said, I hope that the Senate, because this bill has to be approved by the Senate.
Right.
And when I wrote about that, I said, I hope that the Senate won't approve that bill.
Okay. Let me just ask you quickly on that, because we're told now that there are all these different pronouns. It's not just he and she anymore. There's Z and all the rest of it. You're a Quebecer. What is Z en français?
Doesn't exist. So I don't want to change that.
So Quebec is still just
still
got the
okay.
same two basic sexes.
We're still okay.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
that's crazy, that thing.
No.
And we must, we must speak and say what we want to say. And we're in Canada, and so it's, for me, I did a mistake when I voted for that, and I admit that. And so the good news is this bill is not in force, and maybe the Senate, I hope my colleagues at the Senate won't pass that bill. I hope so.
Okay. Does it often seem odd to you? You're a big thinker, and you're regarded as a fairly hardcore libertarian. You like it when people call you Mad Max and all that.
Or the Ron Paul from Canada. I like that.
Yeah, and the Albertan from Quebec.
Yeah.
Which I think actually Alberta seems a lot squishier than the Beauce these days on some of that. But let me ask you that. Do you think, as someone who thinks about big picture fundamentals, is it odd in the Western world in 2017 that we are debating relatively peripheral issues like what bathroom a transgendered person uses? I mean, this seems very small identity group kind of boutique salad bowl politics. It's odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it is something that I'm not doing because, and we did something like that when we were in government. We did a lot of boutique tax credit to buy votes.
Right.
I don't believe in that. My platform is based on fairness, and I believe that we must abolish these special interest group tax credit that we're giving. And we must have a flat tax for 90% of Canadians. So I think a fair policy would be a policy that speaks to every Canadian.
Right.
And like that, I think my campaign is very popular because I don't try to please a special interest group, and I'm saying that openly. And people understand that I'm a principled politician.
Right.
And when you're like that, it's very successful.
Yeah, no. I think that's true. You mentioned that kind of boutique politics that Mr. Harper did when he was Prime Minister, and you were serving with him. One of the things he did in your province was he kind of increased a little bit of arts funding to Quebec, and suddenly boosted the Conservative support there. It was like kind of micromanagement, and you get a little boost in your party's support for increasing arts funding in Quebec or whatever. He's like. And that kind of, those trade-offs are very much a part of Canadian politics in general, but Quebec in particular. And I wanted to ask you what it means to be a conservative in Quebec, which is generally thought of as the most statist province in Canada. What does it, and even Conservative Party leaders who have emerged from Quebec, Jean Charest or Lucien Bouchard,
Brian Mulroney,
even Brian Mulroney, are not thought of as hardcore philosophical conservatives. What does it mean to be a conservative in Quebec?
When I decided to jump into politics in 2006, 11 years now, I did that for the ideas. And I said to myself, I was in the private sector before, vice president of a financial institution. But I decided to do that for the ideas. And I believe that when we have more freedom, we have more prosperity. I'm coming from a riding in both. So for me, it was easy to speak like that in this riding because they're very entrepreneur. They are exporting a lot of their goods in the US. They're like a little bit independent in both, and they're proud of that. So I was speaking for what I believe, and I received a lot of support there. But it was a little bit special with the press, the francophone press in Montreal. They decided, my God, we'll print what Maxime Bernier is saying, and because I was not a mainstream politician.
Right.
So, and that was helping me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of education. And after 10 years, I think people are ready for a big change in Quebec.
Yeah.
And they understand that, like my corporate welfare policy, that
Right.
I'm against that.
Right.
There's a big corporation in Quebec called Bombardier.
Yep.
And
Yep.
people are very proud of that. And you think that, oh, I'm coming from Quebec, I must say yes for a big grant or subsidies coming from the federal government to Bombardier. But I said 3 years ago that we must stop all that and lower taxes to every single entrepreneur.
Right.
And that was very popular in Quebec, and it is still popular in Quebec. So when you explain that, you can be successful, and that's my challenge. We have only 12 seats in Quebec right now.
Right.
There are 78 seats.
Right.
The Liberal government, they have around 38 seats. So I think we can have 30 seats if we speak about what we believe. But you're right, it's a challenge, and we need time. And I think that our program, if I'm the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, we must have our platform, our program ready next fall. So like that, we'll have 2 years to explain that to Canadians. Because yes, it will be tough. The left will come at us, and we'll have to be out there. And I want everybody to be able to explain our program with good common sense and free market policies. And that would be a challenge, but I'm ready to do it. And I think Quebecers are ready because, we have a big government at the provincial level.
Right.
Now we have a big government at the federal level.
Yeah.
And the Quebecers are the ones who are paying the most income tax in North America. So when you're speaking about lower taxes, more free markets, and respecting the Constitution, because also in Quebec, because it's the francophone part of this country,
Right.
they want to protect their culture, the francophone, and that's okay. But they like the Constitution like it is right now. They have a lot of power because it's a federation. And so we must respect that. We must not interfere in provincial jurisdiction like education, healthcare. And when you respect that, you have a constitutional peace. Because, in Quebec, we had a referendum in 1995 that was a big challenge. So the way to please Quebecers and all Canadians is to respect the Constitution and lower taxes. That's a big challenge for me, but it's a challenge that I want to take.
Just to go back to that Bombardier point, because and your point about corporate welfare, there's a lot of places, if you fly in kind of small commuter planes around the world, if you take a flight from LaGuardia to Presque Isle, Maine, and you actually look at the card in the seat in front of you, and you'll discover that you're on a little Bombardier plane. And so if you're an American commuter, you think, wow, this company is really doing well. But as you say, it's actually getting tons of subsidies from various levels of Canadian government. And the assumption is that in a country of 35 million people, you have certain big dominant companies in their industry that have a kind of privileged relationship with government, and the government takes care of them. In Quebec, they even name the autoroute that goes from the border up to Trois-Rivières after Monsieur Bombardier. So they take care of them. It's a very cozy relationship. But the downside is that if you're just a small company trying to break into that market, this guy has the ear of government and you don't.
But we call that crony capitalism, as you know. So you're absolutely right. But I think the corporation, the challenge with Bombardier, they need capitals, they want money, so they ask the Quebec government, the Quebec government, my provincial government gave $1 billion to Bombardier, $1 billion. The federal government gave just a couple of weeks ago $375 million to Bombardier. And I think that's wrong. but because this corporation, they can be competitive and they can have capital on the capital markets. They just have to do one thing. They just have to change the structure of their shares. That's only the family, the Bombardier family, who has more votes. I think for one shares they have 10 votes, something like that. So the private sector, the capitalists, they don't want to invest in that company because they won't be able to have a vote, and it would be unfair. So if they want to have capitals, and they know that, the family, they know that, they just have to change the structure of their stocks, and that, like that, they will be able to have money from the capital markets. So if I were a prime minister right now, I say to them, no more money, just do your things, and you're a good corporation, because yes, they're a good corporation, they have good plane, and they can be competitive, but they can have money from the capital market, not from both government, the provincial and the federal government. And it is unfair for the small business owner. We force small entrepreneur to pay taxes, to give that to a big corporation like Bombardier. So it is why the Federation of Independent Business in Canada, that's a lobby group for businesses, they are asking since a long time, and they're still asking to stop corporate welfare and to lower taxes to every businesses, and that's what I want to do.
Well, you said that the strength of the Canadian Constitution is that it's a confederation and provinces have a lot of power, and you said Quebec has a kind of fierce cultural independence, and they use this phrase after the Tories did unexpectedly well in Quebec a couple of elections ago. They started talking about les bleus, the blues, these kind of die-hard conservative Quebecers. And in what sense are they? In what sense are they conservative? Is it just cultural conservatism? In other words, is it something like the people who voted for Trump in Michigan and Wisconsin, or the Marine Le Pen vote in France? People who want their neighborhood to stay like their neighborhood, or is it something more than that?
I think it is a little bit different. It is people that want to have more freedom and less government in their day-to-day lives. It's more on the independence, personal freedom. The conservative in Quebec and in Canada, they want the state, and they want the state to be out of their business. And that's a big part of my program. And I'm not playing on the identity file. I'm playing on what I believe and what I want. So it's more about less government, more freedom, and they know better than a politician what is good for them. I think the independence, personal independence, personal freedom that people like, and the conservative in Canada, I think they're mostly like that. The identity file in Quebec, because they're francophone, they're different right now, so they don't need anything special. Actually, the leader of the PQ in Quebec, the Independentist Party, they tried la Charte des Valeurs, the values, and that was the part of the last election in Quebec, and she didn't win. Quebecers, they know who they are. They don't need the state to tell them who they are, but they want to have more independence from the state. So I think the conservative, it is more there in Quebec and outside Quebec.
And in the last half century, essentially, Canada, particularly at the prime ministerial level, Quebecers have dominated. Obviously, Pierre Trudeau, Mulroney, Chrétien, even Paul Martin, and Mr. Harper, and then back to Justin Trudeau. And Mr. Harper was a kind of exception from that. And in the rest of Canada, on the right, there was always a certain resentment that to be a national leader, you had to be a Quebecer. So that Mulroney, even though he was a conservative, he had to be the man from Baie-Comeau, and even he was a Quebecer. There doesn't seem to be a resentment among people in Saskatchewan and Alberta and British Columbia about you in the way that there was about Mulroney or Monsieur Charest. You have an appeal in Anglo-Canada that's kind of different from
yes. I think you're right. It's all because of the ideas. And in the beginning, 5, 6 years ago, I was traveling across the country and delivering speeches about what I believe and what I think we believe as a conservative. And I was very popular there, and they started to call me the Albertan from Quebec because they liked the ideas, and they were surprised that a politician from Quebec, that's supposed to be a socialist province, and is speaking about free markets, freedom, less government, ending corporate welfare, and my God, he's speaking like us. And so they appreciate that, and I think that's the way to be a conservative. So that's why they know they can trust me. They can trust me. I'm a principal, and what I'm saying right now today, I said that the last 10 years. So I'm not trying to be different and say something that I will please them to have their vote. They know that I'm authentic, and that's what I believe. That's why I'm in politics. So I think that's why they trust me. It is not because I'm coming from Quebec that they don't like me or they like me. That's not important. I'm not a candidate for Quebec. I'm a candidate for all Canadians based on ideas that are conservatives, and people out west, they trust that. They trust that I will deliver. And because also when I was in government, sometime when I was not in full agreement with something that my government was doing, I was not shamed to be out there and to speak about the real conservative values. So I was not always 100% in line with the position of my government. So they know that I can speak about the real conservative values, and I think that is why they trust me.
Were the Harper years in that sense a little wasted? Stephen Harper believed in incremental steps.
Yes.
He understood that he came into office with a minority government. There was no ringing mandate, and he did this, and he'd do that, and he'd do this, and he'd do that. And he was there a long time, and a lot of conservatives feel not enough was done in that time. Are you one of them?
Yes, but I must admit that was the strategy to have at that time. Because he did that, now I'm able to be out there with a bold reform, and people, conservative and Canadians, they are ready for that. So, but at that time, I think it was the strategy. As you said, we didn't have a majority, and we had 2 minority government, and after that a majority. So that was I think the best strategy at that time. But a lot of conservative, they look back and they're saying, oh, what is the legacy? What is the big thing that we did? So they're looking for something, and so I think that right now, for me, what I'm saying, the time is there. They're ready for bold reform. They're ready for real conservative reform, and I'm ready for it also after 10 years. So let's do it, and we'll do it. But that will be challenging. Like I want to abolish the cartel of supply management. Dairy, poultry, and eggs producer. They're having a special favor. They don't have any competition from outside, and they are producing for the Canadian market. They are fixing prices, so it's a socialist system. I want to get rid of that, but it would be tough because the cartel is very powerful. It's a big lobby. But I think we can convince Canadians. So, and I like to do that. I like to speak about what we believe, and we'll have time to explain our platform. But I agree with you. People, they want now a big change, and I'm the only candidate on the 14 that I don't try to please everybody. I'm speaking about our values, and our policies are based on 4 principles: individual freedom, personal responsibility, respect, and fairness. And people, they like that. So
they do like that. Let me ask how that connects with your personal character. You had a meteoric rise. You were elected in 2006. you eventually became foreign minister, and then you wound up having to resign because of some NATO documents that you left lying around. And you went away, bided your time, and came back. And you eventually came back. But you didn't, it struck me at that time that you, in a sense, you didn't try to cling to office, you didn't try to claw your way back in as soon as you were out. You seemed at ease with yourself and what had happened, and did actually, you know, meteoric rise, collapse, come back. Do you think that actually made you a better person, and B, a better politician?
Better politician and person, yes, for sure. It was tough at that time. I resigned, and I made a mistake and like that. And so I decided to, I asked myself, do I want to stay in politics or not? And I decided, yes, I'll stay in politics. I want to fight for these ideas. So because I decided to stay, I used that time, 4 years. I was a member of parliament, but I was not part of the cabinet.
Right.
And I had a little bit more freedom to speak about conservative values because I was not engaging the government. When you are a minister, you have to, what you're saying, it's the government position.
Yeah.
But when you are a member of parliament, you have more freedom. So I use that time to be out there and speak about what I believe, and I deliver a lot of speeches across the country. And I like it. And that's why I'm ready right now, because I started to build a kind of a program at that time. And that's why I have a comprehensive program right now. But yes, it was tough. And for me, I learned that when you have a tough day with the media and the news, you know, that's a day. The other day will be different. Right. So I'm more certain about my position and my philosophy. Right. So I know that, you know, I was back in the pool. I was not supposed to win my riding. I was supposed to be stupid and all that. And at the end, I won my riding with 67% of the votes, and I came back. So I know that when you have a tough day, it's only one day. And if you stick to what you believe, you'll be successful. And that's what I did. That's what I'm doing right now. And I'm very pleased. And on a personal side, you learn a lot, because when you see yourself in the media every day, and people are telling you, you know, this guy won't be elected. It was tough personally, and I had to take a week without any media, without any phone, just to concentrate on myself, and just decided. I decided at that time that I want to be back in politics. It was a tough time, but up to now I can look at it and said, oh, okay, it was tough, but I did it. So I think that you're able to achieve your dream in life if you stick to it and be persistent. And now I'm a candidate, and it's going very well. People like that. And my opponent, they don't speak about that anymore. And everybody knows that's part of my personality as a politician. I will have to live with that. It's part of the Maxime Bernier, the politician. But you know, it's okay. I deal with it, and I don't have any problem with that anymore.
Let me ask you just one final question. You're regarded as either the front runner or one of the two front runners, and the other guy is a fellow who's basically spent his life in the United States very successfully, got a big TV show, doesn't speak a word of French, and unlike most candidates whose French is a little bit stiff and awkward, he doesn't feel he needs to speak French, that it's like a language for losers, who cares, it's I don't want to know about it. How did you ever think that this would be your principal opposition in the race for leading the Conservative Party of Canada?
No, because he was not supposed to run. But you know, that's the best opponent to have. First of all, people out west and in Canada, outside Quebec, they know that if we want to be back in government, we need to have more than 12 seats in Quebec. And they know that you need to be able to speak French to Quebecers and also francophone all outside Quebec.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think our people, they know that. But second, it doesn't have any platform.
No.
It doesn't have any program.
No.
And like I told you, our people, they're ready for bold reform.
Right.
They want bold conservative principle in
yeah.
action.
Yep.
And he doesn't have anything. He's good in communication. He's speaking a better English than myself, but it's all about big slogan. It's all about buzzword and soundbite for the media. So he's very good at it. But when you ask question, you don't see anything. So for me, I think I have the best opponent. No platform, cannot speak French, but he can raise money. That's important. He's very well known. He's very well known also outside Quebec. He is not well known in Quebec because his show was not in French. So for me, that gives me an advantage in Quebec. But he's very popular. He's able to raise money, and we'll see. There's still 3 months before the end of this leadership if he will come back with a platform. But I think our people, they like the ideas and they like our platform. So I'm looking forward for debating with him again in English. We won't be able to debate in French, but that's okay.
Okay. Well, Maxime Bernier, keep on with those big ideas and keep putting that clear blue water between the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party of Canada. And as Kevin O'Leary wouldn't say, bon chance.
Merci.
Merci, monsieur. Maxime Bernier from PCMP. What is that in French? Conseil.
Député.
Député, mais PC, Privy Councillor, Conseil Privé.
Conseil Privé, you're right.
Oui, the Conseil Privé. Beat that, Kevin O'Leary. Thanks a lot, Maxime.
Merci again. Merci.